When a billionaire mocks a black girl's talent, she fixes more than an engine, she rewrites her family's fate and shocks the world. Raymond Hale, billionaire CEO of Hale Motors, hated being kept waiting. His private helicopter sat useless on the dusty airfield outside a small town in Georgia. The engine had failed mid-flight, and his pilot had guided it down safely, but now they were stranded. A teenage girl in oil-stained overalls approached, wiping her hands on a rag. "You the owner?" she asked. Raymond lifted a brow. "I'm the billionaire who needs this fixed, and who are you?" "Aria," she said, "I work at my uncle's repair shop." He looked her up and down and laughed. "You fix this engine. If you can, I'll pay for your college. Hell, your mom's surgery too." Aria froze. "How did you?" "Small towns talk," he smirked. She clenched her jaw. "Fine, then don't blink." Aria climbed into the machine like she was born for it. Raymond watched, half annoyed, half curious. She didn't hesitate, didn't guess. Every movement was precise. "You've worked on aircraft engines?" he asked. "Not officially." "So you're guessing," he mocked. "I don't guess," she replied. "I remember." When she started humming, her hands moving faster, Raymond frowned. "Why do you do that?" "It helps me think," she said. "My mom taught me. She used to fix engines before her illness." A shadow crossed her face, quickly hidden behind focus. Raymond's smirk faded. This girl wasn't playing. As Aria worked, Raymond wandered around the workshop's yard. Rusted car frames, broken tractors, forgotten machinery, but all of them had one thing in common. Perfect repairs, clean welds, smart fixes. "Your uncle do all this?" Raymond asked. Aria laughed bitterly. "He can't even fix a lawnmower." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "So who?" "I do." She didn't say it with pride. She said it like a person tired of not being believed. He was starting to believe her now. Raymond's pilot whispered, "Sir, she might just pull this off." Raymond scoffed, loudly enough for Aria to hear. "If she breaks it, it'll cost me more than her entire house." Aria's hands slipped. Raymond saw her shoulders stiffen, but instead of arguing, she tightened a bolt and murmured, "People like you think money makes you smarter." He froze. Then she added softly, "It doesn't." Raymond didn't know whether to be offended or impressed. After 2 hours, Aria stood up. "Try it." Raymond nodded at the pilot. The helicopter engine whirred, sputtered, then roared to life. Raymond stared at Aria. "No one your age should know how to do that." Aria shrugged. "Mom taught me. Before she got sick, she worked for your company." Raymond blinked. "What?" "She helped design the early Hale Motors engines," Aria said, "but she never got credit." Raymond's throat tightened. "Impossible." Or was it? Aria's hands trembled as she reached into her worn leather satchel, pulling out a folded, oil-stained notebook that had clearly survived decades of neglect. The corners were frayed, and the pages smelled faintly of rust and machine oil. She laid it on the table between them, as if presenting a sacred relic. "This is hers," she said quietly, almost reverently. "Her sketches, her formulas, her designs." Raymond leaned forward instinctively, his fingers itching to touch the fragile pages. He lifted the notebook with careful precision, opening it to the first page. The handwriting sprawled across the page in elegant, flowing letters, annotations scribbled in the margins, numbers and calculations interwoven with intricate diagrams. Each page was a mixture of genius and chaos, a mind racing against time, against circumstance. As he flipped through page after page, memories of old board meetings, discussions with senior engineers, and late nights poring over patents surfaced. His heart sank with a weight he could hardly name. Every diagram, every formula, every meticulous note was unmistakably from someone he had once known, someone whose work had quietly shaped the foundation of his company's most revolutionary breakthroughs. His breath caught when he saw the initials scrawled at the bottom of a page. LM, the same handwriting he had brushed aside 20 years ago, when an anonymous junior engineer had mysteriously left without explanation. That engineer had vanished, and her contributions had been quietly absorbed, repurposed under the company's name. No one ever spoke of her again. He remembered the heated discussions about patents at the time, how they had debated her sudden departure, how the executive board had decided to move on, as if erasing her existence would erase the awkward truth that they had benefited from brilliance they would never acknowledge. Now, staring at this notebook, Raymond's chest tightened. The recognition hit him like a physical blow. He felt both guilt and awe intertwining in an impossible knot. "Your mother is Layla Morgan?" His voice was barely a whisper, heavy with disbelief. Arya's nod was slow, almost ceremonial. "Yes," she said, her eyes fixed on him. "She never told me everything, but I've been following her work, trying to understand what she left behind, what she built in secret." Raymond closed the notebook carefully, as if touching it roughly could undo decades of secrecy. He ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. He thought of every invention, every patent, every accolade his company had achieved, realizing now that behind the facade of corporate glory lay the uncredited genius of Layla Morgan. "I owe her more than you know," he said, voice rough with emotion. Arya looked at him, studying his expression. He saw recognition, shock, and a hint of remorse mingled together. "She wanted her work to mean something," Arya said softly, "even if no one ever knew her name." Raymond shook his head slowly. "No, she deserved recognition. She deserved more than being forgotten." His mind raced, remembering the legal memos, the late nights debating patents, the countless presentations where her ideas had been presented as anonymous contributions, absorbed into the corporate fabric without credit. He could almost see her now, in a small, dimly lit workshop, working tirelessly, hoping her designs would make a difference even if the world never knew her name. He thought of Arya, standing in front of him, carrying the legacy of her mother, the weight of unacknowledged genius and untold stories. "I need to make this right," Raymond said, the determination in his voice cutting through the years of negligence. "I can't undo the past, but I can honor it. I can ensure she gets the credit she deserves." Arya's eyes softened, a mixture of hope and relief flickering across her face. "It's never too late," she said, "for her and for all she left behind." Raymond nodded, feeling the gravity of the moment. He thought of the company's archives, the patents, the projects that had silently built their empire on her intelligence. And he knew what he had to do, not for the company, not for the board, but for Layla Morgan. The notebook lay between them like a bridge across decades, connecting a daughter, a father figure, and a woman whose brilliance had been hidden in plain sight. Raymond closed his eyes for a moment, taking a steadying breath, feeling a mix of reverence and responsibility. He would uncover the truth, reveal it, and ensure the world finally knew Layla Morgan's name. Every sketch, every formula, every design she had left behind would shine in the light of recognition she had long been denied. And he would start immediately. As he opened the notebook again, tracing a particularly intricate diagram, he felt an unfamiliar thrill, a sense of awe mingled with resolve. This was more than engineering, this was legacy. This was history waiting to be corrected. "We'll need to catalog everything," Raymond said, more to himself than to Arya. "Patents, prototypes, documents, every piece of evidence of her work." Arya nodded. "I've been collecting what I could, but there's more hidden. Places she worked, projects she touched, some things she never wanted anyone to find." Raymond's brow furrowed. "Then we'll find them, every last one." The air between them was charged with purpose. What had once been lost, buried in obscurity and stone, would now be brought to life. Raymond felt a surge of responsibility and gratitude, understanding at last the depth of what had been overlooked. He looked at Arya, her expression steadfast, resolute. "Together we'll do it," he said. "We'll give her the legacy she deserves." And for the first time in decades, Raymond felt that the weight of the past could be transformed into something meaningful, something lasting. Layla Morgan's genius would no longer be anonymous. The notebook lay open, the pages whispering secrets, waiting to tell the world the story that had been buried far too long. And Raymond, with Arya by his side, would ensure that the whispers became a roar. Raymond walked toward Arya with deliberate steps, the late afternoon sky glowing a warm gold behind him, bathing the workshop in a serene light that seemed almost unreal. Every movement he made carried the weight of decades of regrets and unfulfilled promises, yet his eyes held a quiet determination that made Arya pause. The air between them was thick with tension, unspoken thoughts, and the enormity of the moment. He stopped just a few feet away from her, the soft hum of the machinery around them filling the silence. "I made a promise," he said quietly, his voice low but resolute, carrying the sincerity of someone who had learned the hard way the importance of keeping his word. "Fix the engine, and I'll pay for your mother's surgery." The words hung in the air, potent and transformative. Arya's eyes widened slightly, a mix of disbelief and hope flickering across her face. She took a small step back, unsure whether this was a genuine offer or just another fleeting promise, something people said in the heat of emotion but rarely followed through. "People say things they do mean," she murmured, her voice cautious, almost protective of her own heart. Raymond's expression softened, yet the firmness in his eyes never wavered. "I keep my word," he said, his voice carrying an unshakable gravity, and more. There was a pause, long enough for the distant hum of machinery and the subtle creak of the workshop floorboards to emphasize the seriousness of his statement. Then, with deliberate care, he extended his hand toward her, a gesture both simple and profound, a bridge between their worlds. "I want you at Hale Motors," he continued, his words deliberate, measured, each syllable weighted with intention. "Paid internship, full scholarship, your mother's treatment all covered. Every consultation, every procedure, every recovery step. It's done. No questions asked, no barriers, all of it." Arya stared at him, her mind racing to process the enormity of his offer. Her heart pounded, a mixture of fear, disbelief, and hope. The possibility of her mother finally receiving the care she needed seemed almost too good to be true. And yet here was Raymond, standing before her, the very embodiment of authority, sincerity, and possibility. She opened her mouth, searching for words that could express her gratitude, her shock, her cautious optimism, but nothing seemed adequate. "And in return," she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper, as though voicing it too loudly might shatter the fragile hope that had begun to blossom in her chest. Raymond allowed a faint smile to curve his lips, a rare softness breaking through the stern exterior that the world so often saw. "Just bring that brain of yours," he said simply, the words carrying both challenge and encouragement. "Bring your curiosity, your creativity, your dedication. Fix the engine and we'll go from there. But more than that, I want you to grow, to learn, to push yourself beyond limits. I've seen the spark in you, Arya, and it's time the world saw it too." The weight of his words settled over her, both grounding and liberating. She could feel the gravity of the opportunity, the life-altering nature of what he was offering. A paid internship at Hale Motors meant access to resources, mentorship, and a chance to prove herself on a level she had never imagined. A full scholarship would secure her future in ways she had only dreamed of, opening doors that had seemed permanently closed. And her mother's treatment, that one promise alone was enough to bring tears to her eyes, a tide of relief she hadn't allowed herself to feel until this moment. Her mind raced, evaluating the risks, the expectations, and the responsibilities that came with this offer. But beneath it all, there was a fire of determination, a willingness to seize the chance that destiny had so unexpectedly presented. She lifted her gaze to Raymond, meeting his eyes with a newfound resolve, a silent acknowledgement of the trust and expectation he had placed in her. I accept," she said, her voice steady now, filled with conviction. "I'll do it. I'll fix the engine. I won't let you down." Raymond's smile widened slightly, a subtle but genuine expression of pride and reassurance. "I know you won't," he said, his tone carrying the weight of confidence, experience, and faith in her abilities. He gestured toward the engine in the corner of the workshop, the very machine that had sparked this chain of events, a challenge and a test all wrapped in metal and gears. "It's not just an engine," he said, his voice carrying a hint of nostalgia and respect for craftsmanship. "It's a legacy, a puzzle, and I believe you have the mind to solve it." Arya stepped closer to the engine, her fingers brushing the cold metal, feeling the history embedded in every bolt, every gear, every worn surface. She could almost sense the hands that had worked on it before, the minds that had wrestled with its complexities, and now she was part of that lineage. Raymond watched her, noting the flicker of determination in her eyes, the spark that mirrored the very qualities he had admired in her mother. "Once you start," he continued, "I'll be here to guide you if needed, but this is yours. Your challenge, your breakthrough. Show me what you can do." Arya took a deep breath, steadying herself against the surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She nodded firmly, more to herself than to Raymond, a silent promise to honor the opportunity, to honor her mother, and to prove that her potential was as limitless as the challenge before her. Raymond extended his hand again, a gesture sealing the offer, the promise, and the beginning of a new chapter. Arya grasped it, the handshake firm and meaningful, a bridge connecting past sacrifices with future possibilities. The sun dipped lower, painting the workshop in warm amber tones, highlighting the determination etched into both of their faces. In that golden light, Arya felt a sense of purpose crystallize within her, a clarity that had been elusive for so long. She would rise to this challenge, not just for herself, not just for Raymond's promise, but for the mother who had poured her genius into the world quietly, unseen and unacknowledged. And Raymond, watching her with a mixture of pride, relief and renewed hope, knew that he had made the right choice. This was more than mentorship, more than an internship, more than a promise. It was the start of a journey that would redefine both their lives. The air seemed charged with anticipation, the hum of machinery now a background melody to the unspoken vows between them. Arya turned toward the engine, her hands steady, her mind sharp, ready to dive into the challenge that awaited her. Raymond stepped back, allowing her space, yet remaining close enough to support her. "Remember," he said softly, "this is your chance to shine. Your mother's legacy, your future, all intertwined. Don't waste it." Arya looked up, a small, confident smile tugging at her lips. "I won't," she promised. And in that moment, under the golden glow of the setting sun, a bond was forged, a promise made, and the first step toward transforming hope into reality was taken. The workshop, once just a space filled with metal and machinery, now felt alive with purpose, anticipation, and the faint hum of destiny in motion. Arya exhaled, feeling the weight of responsibility, the spark of opportunity, and the thrill of possibility all at once. She had accepted the offer, she had accepted the challenge, and she was ready to prove that genius, perseverance, and heart could move mountains, fix engines, and save lives. Raymond watched her with quiet satisfaction, knowing that this was only the beginning, the start of a journey that would intertwine past mistakes, present opportunities, and future triumphs in ways neither of them could yet imagine. And somewhere deep inside, he allowed himself a rare flicker of hope, the kind that only comes when faith, talent, and destiny align. The offer had been made, and Arya had accepted. Now it was time to see just how far brilliance, determination, and courage could take them. The news spread like wildfire, faster than Arya could have imagined, igniting a storm of opinions, assumptions, and outright hostility. Social media platforms lit up with headlines that seemed almost designed to provoke outrage. "Billionaire hires teen. Is this merit or favoritism? Who does she think she is? A girl from that neighborhood in a high-tech lab." Every post, every comment seemed sharper than the last, slicing through the air with judgment and doubt. Critics swarmed like vultures circling a prize. "She's just a charity case," one headline screamed, bold and accusatory, as if her talent were irrelevant, her effort meaningless. "She must have bribed him," another claimed, insinuating dishonesty where none existed, ignoring the brilliance and dedication that had led her here. "No girl from that neighborhood belongs in an engineering lab," some sneered, using prejudice as a weapon, attempting to belittle her worth and erase her presence before it had a chance to take root. At school, whispers followed her through the halls. Strangers stared, friends asked awkward questions, and even some teachers seemed unsure how to acknowledge her achievement without treading into uncomfortable territory. Arya felt the weight of the world pressing down, an invisible hand tugging at her confidence, threatening to undo the resolve she had fought so hard to build. She tried to ignore most of it, immersing herself in sketches, calculations, and the engine she was tasked to fix, letting her work speak louder than the critics. Each adjustment she made, each formula she refined, became a quiet act of defiance, a refusal to bow to ignorance and prejudice. Yet the backlash had a way of seeping into her mind despite her best efforts. One night, after scrolling through pages filled with criticism and ridicule, Arya sat on the edge of her bed, the dim glow of a desk lamp casting long shadows across her room. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her notebook close to her chest, and for the first time, doubt crept in like a shadow over her determination. "Maybe they're right," she whispered, the words catching in her throat, fragile and fearful. Her voice seemed almost foreign to her own ears. She hadn't allowed herself to feel weak in front of anyone, but now, alone in the quiet of her room, the weight of 1,000 judgments pressed on her chest. Her mother, Layla, entered silently, sensing the turmoil radiating from her daughter. She knelt beside Arya and cupped her face gently, her hands warm and steady, grounding her amidst the storm of doubt. "Baby. Geniuses are never welcomed at first," Layla said softly, her voice calm but firm, carrying the weight of experience, wisdom, and unconditional love. She let her words sink in, repeating them as if they were a spell meant to chase away the shadows. Arya closed her eyes, breathing shakily, letting the warmth of her mother's hands remind her that her worth wasn't defined by the critics, the headlines, or the whispers of those too small-minded to see her potential. Slowly, the fire that had always burned inside her, the fire that had driven her to understand her mother's genius and prove herself in the world, began to return. It flickered at first, hesitant, then stronger, growing into the inferno of determination that had carried her this far. She opened her eyes and looked at Layla, a spark of renewed resolve igniting in her gaze. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice firmer now, resonant with conviction. Layla smiled, pride swelling in her chest, knowing her daughter had found the strength to rise above the noise. The critics would continue to talk, the headlines would continue to appear, but Arya had discovered something far more powerful: the certainty of her own abilities, the clarity of her purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that her path was her own. That night she returned to her workbench, the engine waiting patiently, a challenge that demanded focus, precision, and resilience. Every nut, every gear, every diagram she touched became a statement of defiance, a proof that her talent was undeniable, her determination unbreakable, and her place in the world legitimate. The backlash could roar all it wanted, but Arya had found her voice, her courage, and her fire. She worked late into the night, the hum of the machinery blending with the rhythm of her heartbeat, a symphony of purpose and ambition. With each turn of a wrench, each calculation checked and rechecked, she was telling the world, silently, powerfully, that she belonged here, that her brilliance could not be denied, and that no amount of prejudice, jealousy, or doubt could ever extinguish the light within her. And as the first rays of dawn broke through her window, painting her room in soft gold, Arya allowed herself a quiet, triumphant smile. She had survived the night, the whispers, and the judgment. She had found her strength. And now, with her fire burning brighter than ever, she was ready to face the world, ready to prove that genius, perseverance, and courage could overcome any backlash, no matter how loud, and that her place in the lab, in life, and in history was indisputable. Hale Motors headquarters buzzed with activity as engineers moved between workstations, prototypes, and computers, the air thick with the smell of machinery, oil, and ambition. Arya stepped onto the floor, her presence immediately noticeable, not because she was new, but because there was a quiet intensity in the way she carried herself, a focus that set her apart from anyone else in the building. She approached the cooling system prototype that had stumped the team for months, a problem that had caused late nights, mounting frustration, and endless meetings filled with charts, calculations, and whiteboard sketches. Arya crouched beside the machinery, her fingers tracing the intricate pipes, fans, and valves as she assessed the situation. Engineers stopped their work to watch, curious at first, then increasingly skeptical. A teenage girl new to the company, confident enough to touch a problem they had been grappling with for months. Some whispered behind her back, doubting she could understand the nuances, the hidden faults that had caused repeated failures. Arya ignored them, her mind already racing through formulas, airflow calculations, and material properties. She adjusted a valve slightly, repositioned a cooling duct, and recalibrated the system. Within minutes, the temperature gauges stabilized, showing efficiency levels the engineers hadn't achieved in weeks. A ripple of disbelief moved through the room. Murmurs of astonishment spread like wildfire. "How did she do that? That shouldn't have worked. I don't understand. She fixed it in minutes." Arya smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, calm yet determined, as if solving impossible problems was simply a natural state of being. But she wasn't finished. She moved on to the rotor design, a component the team had struggled to optimize, trying to reduce fuel consumption without sacrificing power. For weeks, their calculations had hit dead ends, simulations returning inconsistent or inefficient results. Arya studied the existing design, her eyes scanning every line, curve, and connection. Within hours, she sketched a new rotor layout on a tablet, integrating airflow principles, material science, and thermodynamics in a combination no one else had tried. When her design was implemented and tested, fuel efficiency increased noticeably, and engine performance remained stable, surpassing expectations. Engineers stared, jaws slack, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others laughing nervously at the sheer audacity of it all. And just when the murmurs began to settle, She took on a project that had been considered too ambitious for someone her age, too complex for anyone without years of experience, building a prototype blueprint from scratch in just 2 days. She pored over schematics, calculations, and design models, integrating multiple systems seamlessly, innovating where the existing approaches had failed. By the end of the second day, she held a complete, functional prototype design that was not only feasible but groundbreaking in efficiency, cost-effectiveness, and sustainability. Raymond watched all of this from his glass office above, pride swelling in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in decades. He observed the engineers below, their skepticism dissolving into awe, their disbelief turning into quiet admiration, even as some stubbornly struggled to hide it. He turned to his board members standing beside him, eyes gleaming with a mixture of astonishment and satisfaction. "This girl," he whispered, his voice low but carrying the weight of certainty. "She's the future of this company." Some of the board members frowned, their expressions betraying old biases and disbelief at the idea that someone so young, from an unconventional background, could outperform seasoned professionals. Others nodded slowly, acknowledging the undeniable truth, their faces showing admiration and a hint of humility. But none of them disagreed, for the evidence was irrefutable. The work Arya had done spoke louder than titles, seniority, or prejudice. She moved through the floor with quiet confidence, addressing engineers' questions, explaining her reasoning, and guiding the team with clarity and authority that belied her age. Every solved problem, every innovative idea, and every breakthrough in design reinforced the notion that talent and determination could not be limited by assumptions or societal expectations. Engineers who had doubted her before now sought her guidance, her input, and her insight, recognizing the depth of her understanding and the originality of her thinking. Raymond continued to watch, feeling a profound sense of validation, relief, and hope. He had known her potential, seen the spark that mirrored her mother's genius, but witnessing it unfold in real time, with tangible results, was almost overwhelming. Arya's presence on the floor transformed the atmosphere. What had been a space of routine and controlled ambition now felt charged with excitement, creativity, and possibility. Ideas flowed faster, collaboration increased, and even the most skeptical engineers began to embrace her methods, learning from her approach to problems and her fearless willingness to innovate. By the end of the day, the once critical murmurs had been replaced with quiet admiration and acknowledgement. Arya had proven herself beyond doubt, not by demanding recognition, but by letting her talent speak, loud and clear, through results. And as the sun set over Hale Motors headquarters, casting long shadows across the engineering floor, one thing was certain. The world of engineering had just witnessed the arrival of a prodigy, someone whose brilliance could not be ignored, someone who had turned skepticism into respect through sheer ability and determination. Raymond looked down one last time before leaving his office, a small smile playing on his lips. He knew that the company, the industry, and the future itself were about to be transformed by Arya's genius. And deep inside, he felt a mix of pride, relief, and awe, understanding that he had not only recognized potential, but had nurtured it into reality, proving that belief, opportunity, and mentorship could change the course of someone's life, and perhaps the world. The engineers below, now fully aware of her exceptional abilities, worked alongside her with renewed energy, inspired by her example. And Arya, moving seamlessly from one task to the next, remained calm, focused, and unshakable, knowing that every challenge she overcame was a testament to her mother's legacy, her own resilience, and the undeniable truth that brilliance, no matter where it comes from, cannot be ignored. Months had passed since Arya first stepped onto the floor of Hale Motors, her hands trembling over tools and blueprints, unsure if she belonged. But now, standing on the grand stage of the company's innovation hall, the transformation was undeniable. The Hale Motors headquarters was buzzing with anticipation, the air electric with excitement, the scent of polished floors and fresh technology mingling with the hum of conversations and the clicks of cameras. The Morgan Hale hybrid drive, the culmination of tireless work, late nights, endless calculations, and innovative breakthroughs, gleamed on the display behind them. Engineers, board members, investors, journalists, and technology enthusiasts filled every seat, cameras poised, eager to witness the announcement. Arya walked beside Raymond, her posture confident, her heart steady despite the weight of the moment. Photographers flashed in rapid succession, capturing every step, every smile, every detail of the stage, immortalizing the moment before it even began. The murmurs of the crowd quieted as Raymond stepped forward, microphone in hand, eyes scanning the audience before settling on the polished engine behind them. He took a deep breath, allowing the silence to settle, then spoke, his voice carrying across the hall with clarity, authority, and profound respect. "This engine exists because of the genius of two people," he announced, gesturing toward Aria, then to the large screen behind them where historical blueprints flickered briefly. Layla Morgan, the forgotten engineer who laid the foundation decades ago, and her daughter Aria, who reminded us all what brilliance looks like, how innovation and determination can overcome neglect, prejudice, and doubt. The crowd erupted into applause, flashes of cameras illuminating faces, the recognition of talent and perseverance reverberating throughout the room. In the front row, Layla Morgan, now healthy after her surgery, wiped tears from her eyes, overwhelmed by pride, gratitude, and awe. She had seen her daughter rise, witnessed the opportunity she had been given, and now, for the first time, the world was acknowledging not just her own contributions, but the legacy that lived on through Aria. Aria took the microphone next, her hands steady, voice resonant, and commanding despite the emotions welling inside her. "This isn't just about engines," she began, pausing to let the words sink in. "It's about every kid who was underestimated, mocked, or overlooked. Every young person who has ever been told they didn't belong, who faced doubt because of where they come from, who was told their potential wasn't enough. This engine is a symbol, a testament, and a challenge to every system, every institution, and every person who ever questioned someone's worth before seeing their work, their mind, their heart." She glanced at Raymond, a small, meaningful smile passing between them, acknowledging the man who had given her a chance when others had doubted, who had recognized potential where many had only seen age, appearance, or circumstance. "You gave me a chance," she said softly but with power, "and I promise to honor it. I will build not just engines or machines, but opportunities, pathways, and resources for others, so that no talent, no brilliance, and no dedication ever goes unrecognized again." The applause grew louder, swelling into a roar, engineers rising to their feet, journalists cheering, photographers capturing the moment with feverish intensity. The magnitude of the announcement, the recognition, and the message behind it transcended technology, transcended engineering, and touched something deeply human, a celebration of opportunity, fairness, perseverance, and the transformative power of mentorship. Raymond stood beside her, his chest swelling with pride, a rare, unguarded smile spreading across his face. The girl he had once mocked, the young prodigy who had arrived quietly but fiercely, had done more than fix engines and solve impossible problems. She had changed minds, shattered prejudices, and reminded the world that talent cannot be measured by age, skin color, or circumstance. "She has shocked the world," Raymond whispered to himself, glancing down at Aria as the crowd continued to cheer. He thought back to the first time he had dismissed her potential, the arrogance and skepticism he had allowed to cloud his judgment, and he felt gratitude, not only for her brilliance, but for the lesson she had given him and the company. Aria lowered the microphone, letting the applause wash over her, every clap and cheer a reminder of how far she had come, how much she had overcome, and how much impact a single opportunity could create. Cameras flashed endlessly, journalists took notes furiously, and social media buzzed even beyond the walls of the headquarters. The Morgan Hill hybrid drive was more than an innovation in engineering. It was a statement, a declaration, a revelation. And at the heart of it stood Aria, brilliant, resilient, and unyielding, carrying the legacy of her mother, honoring the opportunity Raymond had given her, and committing to a future where no potential would ever go unseen again. The applause slowly subsided, but the energy lingered, electric and palpable, leaving an imprint on everyone in the room. Layla reached for her daughter's hand, squeezing it tightly, tears of joy spilling freely, her heart overflowing with pride and relief. Aria looked at her mother, then at Raymond, then back to the audience, knowing this was only the beginning. The crowd had witnessed her triumph, but the true victory was the ripple it would create. Opportunities opened, minds changed, and barriers broken. Raymond patted her shoulder lightly, the simplest gesture carrying a universe of pride, respect, and awe. "The girl I once doubted," he murmured to a nearby colleague, voice soft, reverent, "has just rewritten the rules." And in that moment, Under the bright lights, the flashes of cameras, and the thunderous applause of the audience, Arya Morgan, the underestimated, the overlooked, the doubted, had done exactly what she set out to do. She had shocked the world, honored her mother's legacy, and shown that brilliance, courage, and determination could not and would not be ignored.